Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I wanted to kind of follow up on my last video on the whistleblowers because this is some of the results from the whistleblowers. The convictions, the plea deals, what's going on, is anybody actually going to jail? Well, let's look and see. We have here a website that talks about the federal charges. If you happen to get federal charges against you, this is a good website to go to get information. And remember that down below I'll put all of these links so you can check them out for yourself. This first one, look at what it says. Most federal criminal cases never go to trial. Instead, they end up with a formal plea bargain between the defendant and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The defendant agrees to plead guilty, and in exchange, the prosecution agrees to either drop some charges or agrees to recommend a shorter sentence for the defendant. The prosecution normally likes to enter into plea agreements because it saves the time and expense of going to trial, and it guarantees a conviction. A defendant might want to enter a plea agreement in several circumstances. The defendant knows that he or she is guilty and wants to bargain for a lesser sentence. The defendant is innocent, but entering a plea agreement is easier and less time-consuming than going to trial, and I might add, less expensive by far, because these trials can be really expensive. And this, I think, is what happened with General Flynn, that he entered a plea agreement because it was easier, it was quicker, and the finances were just getting too much for him and his family. So that was one reason. The last one is the defendant can cooperate with prosecutors in other cases, which is also what General Flynn was doing. He has been working with other cases because he's not guilty. And so he's been working on those because his plea agreement says he's been participating in covert law enforcement activities. So that's what I think he's been doing, and I do believe that he was totally innocent. I know he says that he did, but it's all part of the plan. I know it is, and there's something just so totally fishy about it all. So something's up. He set a trap, I think, and they fell into it, and they're working out the details of it. And the reason he didn't take the offer of the judge to retract his guilty plea was because I think he's still got work to do. They're still wrapping up some of these cases. Remember, they had to build cases on all of these people. They had to take the evidence, they had to put it together, they had to present it to grand juries. It takes a very long time because, remember, this is so massive. It is so much bigger than most people know. I think it's probably a lot bigger than I and a lot of the Anons know. So it is huge. Remember, Q told us 70% of our government was corrupt, and I will believe that because we have had so many things going on. Some of the people have been good people who have been blackmailed into things. So keep that in mind too when you look at who they are. Sometimes the rumors out there are trying to make everybody look guilty. I'm not so sure that some of them are that guilty. I think maybe they compromised here or there, but for the most part, they're good people. So let's go on. Generally, the plea agreement can reduce your risk of a longer sentence. Not all federal cases can be easily defended, and prosecutors at the federal level usually have ample evidence against you before the trial begins. Remember that. They have ample evidence against you before the trial begins. This is one reason why trials have not begun yet, because they have ample evidence. They've been gathering ample evidence. They want to make sure that their cases are built and solid before they start. Plea bargains in federal cases are full of hazards, as the rules of federal criminal procedures make sure that you will not have access to much of the discovery in the case. It is common for federal prosecutors to offer little in return for what they demand from you. Obviously, this is not a government site. For instance, it is common for the prosecutor to demand that any plea deal include a waiver of your right to appeal the sentence. The prosecution also may want you to admit not to just the crime, but to other conduct that can be used to enhance your sentence. Further, prosecutors may ask that you agree to a sentence within federal sentencing guidelines. Really, when things go to a federal court, you have a very high probability that you will be convicted. That's the whole bottom line of it, and that's why a lot of people take plea deals. You should know that most federal cases these days are decided by plea bargain. Only 8% of all federal criminal charges in 2013 were dismissed, and more than 97% were completed through plea bargain, and only 3% went to trial. The plea bargain often will decide the sentence that is given to you. Many defendants decide to go for a plea bargain because the odds are high that if you are convicted, the sentence will be much worse. On many federal charges, such as ones involving drugs, there are harsh minimum sentences that the judge must impose. You could be offered a plea bargain where you would only spend 5 years in federal prison. A conviction, however, could have a much harsher sentence of 20 years or more. There are documented cases of drug offenders who were offered 15-year plea deals and rejected them and now serve life in federal prison. Yay for them. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with this. This is not a federal government website, but it does have a lot of good information about that, and I wanted to point it out to you. So the question is, has anybody been arrested? So let's look. Federal jury finds 3 men guilty in fraud case that has rocked college basketball. I don't know if you heard about this. Back on October 24th, 2018, this came out, and yes, they were found guilty, and as it says here, they could spend years in prison. This is the first of 3 cases slated for trial. Now, what this was is that they focus on under-the-table payments intended to steer top high school talent to certain schools, then to apparel brands and sports agents once those players go pro. There's one down here that they talk about that is a high school boy who ended up, let's see if I can find it here, high school kids. This includes one of the players, a kid named Brian Bowen Jr., was paid $25,000 to play just one summer of AAU basketball for an Adidas-sponsored team. Adidas got him $25,000. Yeah, wow, not bad. That's a great summer job. It sure is. So yes, a few have been suspended, but nothing major. And how will it affect them? I don't know exactly. I didn't find anything else on it, but I'm sure it's out there. But I wanted to bring that to your attention. Yes, they were found guilty in this fraud case. So that is a federal jury. So that was a federal case. Now, Breitbart came out with this article at the end of the year, the 9 biggest takedowns of food stamp fraud in 2018. And this talks about, yes, there are people who have gone to prison. Baltimore shopkeeper gets 27 months in prison, owes $1.5 million for food stamp fraud. And he was a shopkeeper, got caught trafficking $1,532,642 in food stamps, prompting a judge to sentence him in January to 27 months in federal prison and 3 years supervised release. So, you want to know? There's somebody who is in prison. The judge also ordered him to pay back the money he stole to the federal government. Florida officials bust nearly 200 for food stamp fraud and undercover investigation, and that was in March. Detectives say they found up to 390 fraudulent transactions over 6 months. No indication whether anybody went to prison on that. I don't think so, but it could be. It doesn't really say. Number 3, Detroit shopkeeper pleads guilty to running $2 million food stamp fraud. A Detroit shopkeeper pleaded guilty in March to running a $2 million food stamp fraud scheme where he allowed customers receiving SNAP benefits to trade them for cash. As part of his plea deal, he agreed to pay back the $2.3 million he stole through food stamp, Medicaid, and bank fraud. So he's paying it back, but what happened to him, I don't know. He has a plea deal. I don't know what his plea deal says. Number 4, a South Carolina man sentenced to 27 months owes $1 million for food stamp fraud. Now, I know these are kind of nickel and dime when you're talking about billions, but these all add up. These are just on the food stamps, okay? This is all that this article is about. So you have this one sentenced to 27 months. So yes, this one went to prison. Number 5, investigators discover 8.4 million food stamp fraud in Ohio, and that they conducted a search warrant of an Ohio meat delivery business uncovering 8.4 million in fraudulent SNAP transactions that were conducted at the store between August 2011 and September 2017. And then you have number 6, Florida Welfare Agency fires 31 employees for food stamp fraud, and it says accusing them of fraudulently obtaining food stamp benefits set aside for disaster victims. What slime balls, really. Taking it from the disaster victims? The agency took down the suspected fraudsters working in the agency after conducting an internal investigation. Number 7, store owners sentenced to prison. There's another prison one. Ordered to pay $1.7 million for food stamp fraud. A Pennsylvania store owner got 21 months in prison in September for running a $1.7 million food stamp fraud scheme as part of his sentence. The judge also ordered him to pay $1.7 million back to the federal government. So, then number 8, former food stamp fraud investigator to plead guilty to extortion. Check this out. A former food stamp fraud investigator who committed fraudulent schemes like the ones he was tasked with investigating. I mean, this is what the guy was supposed to be investigating himself, and he turns around and does it to others. Pleaded guilty in November to extortion charges. Prosecutors say the investigator bilked money from convenience store owners who committed food stamp fraud between 2012 and 2014. Oh, who was president then? Wonder why that wasn't dealt with before, and it's only being dealt with now in 2018. Isn't that interesting? Number 9, 3 Arkansas shopkeepers plead guilty to $400,000 food stamp fraud. 3 Arkansas shopkeepers pleaded guilty in December to orchestrating a $400,000 food stamp fraud scheme where they used food stamps to purchase items that they would resell in 3 different convenience stores. Interesting. And so, yes, they have had some people who have gone to prison, at least for food stamp fraud, in 2018. So there have been some things going. Now, if you want to see 2017, you can go to this. This is the U.S. Department of Education, and this is the OIG report, the Office of Inspector General, the report for the Department of Education, because each department has their own inspector general who is running an investigation on that particular department. So you all know about Horowitz. Horowitz is the Department of Justice IG. Okay, so there are other IGs for other departments, but he is the one for the DOJ. Now, they don't have the 2018 numbers in, but this is for 2017. Plus, it also, you can go back all the way to 1999 and look. So, these people have been working very hard behind the scenes. And yes, they have been uncovering fraud, and some of the people have gone to jail. This guy was the school superintendent indicted on fraud charges for allegedly misappropriating school funds for his own benefit. And then there's this Providence Plan finance director sentenced for embezzling $742,000. Woman pleads guilty to theft concerning programs receiving federal funds. Now, the big problem that we have is you can see that they plead guilty or you can see that they were convicted. But as for the sentencing, sometimes the sentencing takes a little while for it to come out. So it's in another article. And so if you take these, sometimes it will tell you what their sentencing was and sometimes it won't. So it's just kind of a hit and miss on that. Yeah, I'm sure there was some kind of sentencing or a plea deal of some kind that has descriptions in it, but unless you want to go through each of these individual ones, it's kind of a tedious task really to do that. But I thought I would show this to you, and this is for 2017, which was Trump's first year in office. And so, yeah, there was a lot going on there. And then you can go to 2016. There were a lot in 2016, but look at this. This is 2016. It fits all on this one page. And then go back here and look at 2017. So it's a little longer. Not a lot longer, but a little longer. It'll be very interesting to see when the 2018 report comes out what exactly that is. I think September 30th was the end of their fiscal year, so I think that probably some of the reports will be delayed just a little bit, and especially with the shutdown, I'm not sure that they've got them done yet. So the reports will be in there one of these days. You can kind of bookmark this and maybe come back to it in a couple months and see if they have 2018. Be interesting to see. But that was 2016. And then 2015, look, less. 2014, ooh, lots in 2014. Ooh, lots and lots in 2014. That's interesting. 2013, ooh, they had a lot. Wow, they had a lot in 2013. Holy cow. And 2012. So yeah, these people have been busy. So go through there and you can see them. This is, like I said, just for the Department of Education. Each department has their own OIG. And so if you can go to the department site, you can usually find an OIG report on there somewhere. That's actually how I got to the CIA one that I did the other day, because I was looking for the OIG report on the CIA. I couldn't find it. I have not found that yet. It's kind of interesting. They have so many other resources on their website, but they don't have that particular one. But anyway, I wanted to show you this article from Forbes. This is from January of 2014. I thought it was really interesting. Government programs have become one big scammer fraud fest. And here's what it says. Now remember, this is 2014, so this is Obama years. Amongst all the polls about how various groups view their prospects going into 2014, I'd like to see one polling people who habitually defraud the government. I bet it would be off the charts positive as they look for a banner scammer year. And again, this was 2014. 2014 is actually a kind of key date because that's the year that Obama removed General Flynn from his position as the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. I think probably that General Flynn saw a lot of corruption going on, and that was one of the reasons. Of course, there are official reasons that were given as to why he was removed, and they make it look totally different than it really was. I'm pretty sure General Flynn knew a lot of what was going on, and he saw the corruption. And that's one of the reasons why the military intelligence is working on their plan behind the scenes right now. I'm positive of that one. So anyway, then it goes on. We're being inundated by news stories of fraud perpetrated against numerous government programs. The feds themselves put Medicare and Medicaid fraud at approaching 10% of the program's budgets, or about $100 billion a year for the two programs. And I'm betting that's on the low side. Yeah, probably wasn't. And yet, instead of solving this problem, President Obama harangues the country, and especially Republicans, for being unwilling to throw even more money at the federal government's fraud fest. This was just interesting. I'm going to let you read the rest of this because it does talk a little bit more about him. But I thought it was really interesting that, hey, here's somebody who actually said something negative about Obama. Hey, I wonder if he's still working for Forbes. Would be interesting to find out. But there you go. And they have become one big scammer fraud fest. And that is something that Trump knew when he was getting into things, and he understood it. A lot of the reason people are frustrated because they're not seeing enough happen right now is because they really just don't understand the magnitude. It is a lot bigger than most people know. There are so many rats that have to be taken care of, and you can't catch them one at a time. You've got to set a trap and get a big bunch of them all at once. So that's what's happening here. They're working on making sure they have all of their cases built very solidly, because we don't want anybody getting out of this, right? And they only get one shot at it. So let's do it right. Let's make sure the convictions stick. And we'll see them behind those old bars one of these days. It's coming. It's coming sooner than you think, but it's just taking a long time because the problem is so very big. There are a lot of rats in the swamp you got to take care of. But they're panicked right now, and we're watching them squirm. I have one last thing I want to leave you with. I have a commenter who put in some of her videos. These things are hysterical, and they only last for like a minute or so. You gotta come to this channel and see them. She has hardly any subscribers and hardly any views on these, but they are really well done. They're funny. They're to the point. I love coming here and watching the new videos. So go over, check them out. You gotta see what these are. They are too funny, and I don't want to play them because I don't want to take away from her views. So go there, make sure that you get the views. I'll put the link down below. You can see them yourself. And the channel is Madam Ima. Make sure you go check yourself, and especially see this one on Jim Acosta and Elizabeth Warren. These were pretty funny, these newer ones. They were pretty funny too. All of them are. I mean, I haven't hit one yet that wasn't funny. So go for it. Go check it out. Give her a lot of views. Give her a lot of thumbs up. Make some comments. It really is worth it. So I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.